All right, missed this one while I was on vacation, but I had to take time to circle back. So the rapper YG just dropped one of the more powerful songs of the year, maybe the decade, low-key, bravely, rawly discussing his experience being by an older woman as a teenage boy. To start, it's a great track. Like in general, it's some dope West Coast shit. It's wild to be like in this West Coast resurgence era. Like, the West Coast sound was such a big part of my upbringing in the 90s. It was everywhere. It was very prominent. And then like in the early 2000s, it basically disappeared. Like nobody was using that sound except for, you know, the OGs of the West Coast, Snoop Dogg, E40, etc. To see Kendrick pull it back out of the ether and remind us, no, you love this sound for a reason. It's a good time overall. Unfortunately, the subject matter of YG's song is not a good time. YG gives a clear and raw tale of the effects of what his assault did to him, how it made him see himself differently, become less caring about himself, less caring about the world around him. It made him feel numb, be hyper-focused on all the toxic tropes of Black masculinity. And I love that he's the one talking about it, because while there has been an improvement in terms of men talking about experiences of sexual assault and rape by women, it's mostly been met with deaf ears and resistance from men and women alike who struggle to acknowledge this experience as valid when it doesn't come from certain types of dudes. And for Black men specifically, I think it's because it directly conflicts with how people want to imagine Black male sexuality as this otherworldly raw force that only dominates and seeks and provides pleasure. Something that can't be seen as vulnerable or capable of being victimized. And I think it might take a Black man who embodies that image so perfectly like YG does to make the point for people to actually take it seriously. I've talked about my own experiences with sexual assault by women on occasion, and others have as well, but I'm also a guy who looks like he works at GameStop. So like, I know that certain people just aren't gonna hear me in that regard. I just don't embody the type of male presence that some people will take seriously. But maybe YG can get that point across. This photo he used on the cover and in the single really does a lot to engage with that paradox, specifically of how Black men have been forced to deal with this problem historically. Here's YG clad in a black suit, black gloves, with the faceless woman in his ear, reaching for his dick as he stares into the camera. In another context, this is a trite trope of hip hop masculinity, but considering that the song is about his own assault, you're forced to think about him and her differently in this moment. And that is the thing that I think is needed the most. As I mentioned in that video about Black boys in colleges a little while back, and in so much of my content, we are very comfortable talking about Black men and boys in a certain way. We have some very well discussed and studied topics around Black men as problems, and we also know how to celebrate Black men who fulfill the masculine role well, and we champion and idolize those men. But we don't have a great deal of discussion on Black men's full humanity, and even less discussion of Black men as victims of sexual abuse, specifically from women. And this is because the very concept of men being sexually assaulted is still emerging as an issue worth caring about. And because of that, even the data around it is underdeveloped. A CDC study from 2017 indicates that 25% of men will experience some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. The study also indicates that Black men are more exposed, as 1 in 6 Black men will face sexual violence versus 1 in 10 white men. But really, you don't need this data. If you go and start having real conversations about Black men, about how they lost their virginity, a lot of them are going to tell you a story that sounds a lot like YG's. I want to take a moment to point out that just like issues of violence and sexual violence against Black women, the biggest factor that exposes them to this harm is economic status and poverty. There are gender problems between Black men and women. You really don't need me to tell you this if you pay attention to anything happening online right now. And those problems are deep and complex, but they're rooted in issues of how Black men and women perform gender and how patriarchy still endures in Black communities, even when patriarchy was never made for us to perform in Black communities. But I want to be clear, just like it's not some intrinsic flaw in Black men's character, this also does not represent an intrinsic flaw in the character of Black women. This shouldn't be presented as a gotcha to our Black women, which sadly it often is when used by bad faith actors who are all over social media. Y'all know who they are. Instead, what this really needs to be is a way for Black men to recognize their actual position in the gender hierarchy and dissuade overinvestment in the pursuit of patriarchy. As much as y'all hate when I use that word, It is patriarchy that convinces young men and boys that these incidents of assault should be seen as badges of honor, as evidence of their manhood. And I'll go one step further and say that, at least in my experience and the Black men I've been around, this isn't a data-driven take. I want to be clear on that. But in my experience, it's often Black men who best fit a Black masculine ideal, like a YG. These men that are often more attractive, more charismatic, and maybe even more prone to toxic behavior, they're also more exposed to these threats. And while prior sexual abuse does not dictate future behavior, it is strongly correlated to the problems that men sometimes present women. When you look at the usual suspects of Black male public dysfunction specifically, your Chris Browns, Mike Tyson, R. Kelly, Lil Wayne, Nick Cannon, and so on, all of them are victims of sexual abuse by women, whether they acknowledge it as abuse or not. And then you have people like Lil Boosie, who allegedly bought a prostitute for his 13-year-old son so he would be brought up right. It's hard to make sense of, but yes, this is a manifestation of patriarchy, a specific form of adultification for Black men where we force them to shed boyhood at the first sign of puberty or earlier in order to be real men, because we think that they need to be real men to engage with the world as a Black man. There's some homophobia and femphobia in there as well, and everyone in the Black community is in on it. I want to be clear, though, that this isn't a Black male only issue, even historically. Rock legend and noted PDF downloader from Red Hot Chili Peppers, Anthony Kiedis, had a father similar to Lil Boosie who had him assaulted by a sex worker at 13. Many white men go through similar incidents. If you are in certain parts of the internet, you will often see stories about young, attractive white female teachers assaulting their white male students. But this also shows how so many other factors are in play here. For one, the response to these stories is often between two camps. Weirdos who say stuff like, "Where were these teachers when I was a kid? I wish I was sexually assaulted." Or possibly worse, people who use these moments where we're supposed to be concerned about the issues that men face to only want to score points in gender wars nonsense. That again is a hard part about this conversation because it attracts some of the worst types of online people who aren't really interested in the protection or well-being of men as much as they are in proving that women are bad. Also, again, these stories almost always feature young, attractive white women, which shows the ways in which these stories are utilized to manipulate the attention economy for likes and clicks. It doesn't ever really want to get at the reality of these types of situations because that would require people to actually confront issues rooted in patriarchy, normative gender performance, along with socioeconomic status. People hate when I bring up all those sociological feminist terms and I get it, but I think it's stupid and I want to make sure y'all understand that. Understand that identity politics and gender studies are really complex and they've been used to flatten and really oversimplify complex issues online, often as a cudgel to people that are marginalized, but not the right type of marginalization. I get that that's a thing, but that's not the only thing. And that's often when I get resistance from the concepts of patriarchy, it's never from people who actually have studied these issues. It's only from people who have learned about patriarchy from their Manosphere Red Pill podcast and swear that I don't know what I'm talking about, even though it's something they've never actually read or studied outside of that bubble. But if you're not ready to listen to me, maybe you'll listen to YG, because he said, "Got took advantage of and I liked it, so what? Y'all called that sex abuse shit. I just thought she was doing some cool shit. If I would have told mom about the new shit, the bitch probably would have been up on the news." What YG is getting at here is how he was set up for this abusive experience in his environment. But he himself couldn't identify a clear predator because he hadn't been taught that as a male, he was capable of being victimized. This ideological framework is intrinsically built into patriarchal performance of masculinity, a framework that automatically positions males as aggressors in any sexual environment. It's the same framework that asks female victims of sexual assault what they are wearing, as if that's intrinsic to male behavior to be predatory towards women who show off a little too much skin. And this is just one minor example of it. I could go on forever around this. If you're more interested, or maybe watching this realizing you might need to seek support around this topic, I don't have all or the perfect resources. I am associated with Black Man Build, which has chapters that do group talks and regular meetups in various places around the country. But there's also tons of stuff online. Professor Odie talks about this. I love the Instagram Every Nigga Deserves. Jason Wilson is another useful figure with a large following. There's the Men's Lib Reddit page, which is for everyone, although it is on Reddit, so be prepared for Reddit stuff. I've made videos on the topic. Foreign Man in a Foreign Land has as well. Lil Bill has as well. And I'm sure there's plenty others. There's a lot of places to go and start if you are a man who is a survivor of sexual assault and haven't processed or even started to even look into those things. There's so much out there. You just have to go look for it. Although I will warn you, like, this is my one caveat. If you are going into a men's support type space, if they spend more than 20% of their time complaining about women, you are in the wrong space. You are going to only make things worse. But you got to start somewhere, even if it's not with me. But while I have you, this isn't the first time I tried to tackle this topic of Black masculinity within hip hop. In fact, I did it a while back on this channel with a video about Tupac. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of trying to show Tupac as a multifaceted figure. Instead of just focusing on Tupac's thug image, I pointed out that Tupac in many ways had a very queer presentation of Black masculinity, especially for the time. And this made niggas really mad. I legit got some threats. That's low-key one of the reasons why that video is no longer on YouTube. But if you still want to watch it, and it is a great companion to this video, it is on my streaming service, Nebula. In case you haven't been following me for a while, I've been able to do numerous videos like this because I have the support of Nebula. They have been instrumental in supporting me as I built this channel over the years, and not just me, plenty of other creators. I'd argue some of the most talented and forward-thinking creators that are on the YouTube platform and beyond. And because there's so much talent on the Nebula roster, they had the idea to expand outside of just being something competing with YouTube to being a full-on independent film studio. And so a lot of us are going from working on YouTube videos to full-fledged documentary series or actual drama or comedy or sci-fi series. There's some things happening that I can't bring up right now because they haven't fully been announced, but there's also things that you already know about, such as Tom Nicholas's documentary Boomers, which looks at the effects of how an aging population is low-key ruining the world right now, or more light stuff like the travel reality show The Getaway, featuring friend of the channel, Foreign Man in a Foreign Land. And I also recently released my first original short documentary, Talking to White People, and I have so many more projects in my head that can't exist here on YouTube that I plan on developing with Nebula going forward. This is only possible because of support from you. Nebula is an independent service. We are not owned by Google or any big tech companies. Everything we make is produced in-house and funded directly through support from viewers. This is why you're seeing this ad read, because we need you to help us continue to make our vision come to life. If you want to be a part of this, follow the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to sign up for Nebula for 1 year for 40% off. You'll be supporting the growth of not just my channel, but of creators like me to continue to grow beyond the limitations of YouTube and modern media as a whole. Thank you so much for watching. I'm FD Signifier, and this has been Light Work.